Hi, welcome to this round of Snowmobiler television. On today's show, we're coming to you from Missouri. Why Missouri, you ask? Well, we're in Missouri because we're at the building that makes Ultimax snowmobile belts. A building that's been building snowmobile belts as long as there's been snowmobiles. So let's get this show in gear.
STV is brought to you by Yamaha. Conquer snow with Yamaha. Ultimax Belts. Performance driven, performance proven. Ford F-Series, Canada's best-selling line of trucks for 53 years. Tough, smart, capable.
The CVT system is a key component in the snowmobile and really what makes it perform so good on the snow. But a key component of the CVT is the belt. And this facility in Springfield, Missouri has been producing snowmobile drive belts since the mid-60s. Today, this is where the Ultimax line of belts are built.
The Timken company coming in as our current owner has been a real benefit to the business as far as the relationship with the managers, the employees, kind of how the business runs and looking at new opportunities. Of course, the Timken name is very strong in industry, and for us that's been a big advantage as we've looked at new opportunities in the marketplace to go after new business. Having that Timken name and that brand equity has been very valuable. So the plant was built originally in 1959, and it's about 650,000 square feet. Of course, there have been a couple of expansions that have happened over the years, but if you go out into the facility and look at some of the operations, you're going to see some that are, newer technologies. But when you go around, you're going to see a lot of equipment that has been around for a long time. I mean, we do have one piece of equipment here that was from the turn of the century. It's well over 100 years old. We use it to cut fabric and it functions fantastic. And so kind of have the mentality, if it's not broke, don't fix it. It runs well. So we do have that. However, we do have other machines that are very automated in how they will handle material, cut material, splice material, things of that nature. As far as when you go out and actually look at the equipment that we're building on in the belts, the belt industry is a mature industry. It's still considered a bit of an art form as far as the employees working with the materials, very hands-on, very manual. There's not a lot of equipment out there that is automated in any form or fashion. A lot of the equipment, as you walk through the plant, you'll find it was engineered by us for our specific processes and what we're trying to achieve in building products or processing materials. So a lot of the engineering work behind it was done here. One of the things we do hold dear to us is the proprietary information we have when it comes to our materials, and not only how we mix them, but also how we process them before they go into the belt assembly. Specifically, what we've done is you've got some cameras all around the equipment, constantly monitoring how we're feeding to make sure we're tracking the thickness of the material coming off. So even though a lot of the equipment, you walk around, you're going to see equipment that we've been using for 10, 20, 50 years, maybe longer, what you'll find is there are incremental improvements that have been made to them over the years. You're going to find specifically items like how we ply up the material, or maybe how we're able to hold a tighter tolerance with the processes, or in some cases where some of our material science has changed, and so we've come up with new compounds, and by going to some of these new compounds, it's required us to go and take a look at the equipment and come up with different methods for cutting, or being able to cut to hold a tighter tolerance, or some of those continuous improvement, requirements that really, if we're going to stay viable in the industry and as we continue to improve the product, we got to make the processes fall in line with that. So there's been a lot of investment into those processes, certainly over the years. So yes, we do have a lot of equipment that's still out there and still running and still producing high quality belts, but yet at the same time, you can't sit still. Equipment manufacturers, they're continuing to develop higher performance, faster, bigger, more power, and we've got to run alongside with those customers at the same time. Well, with Timken as our current owner, I would say the future for Springfield is very bright. We see this as a long-term facility, and there's a commitment to this facility long-term. This facility in particular builds a lot of your higher complexity products, not necessarily the highest volume, but a lot of complexity. So we're really seeking out the high performance products, the high performance constructions that are required for power sports, agriculture, a lot of just general industrial drives that are in the marketplace, but strong commitment. Kind of the programs we're looking at for the future is, again, how can we go out here and be able to true up our processes, be able to hold even tighter tolerances? How do we come up with new materials, being able to process them in ways that gives us a competitive advantage into the marketplace? It's a continuous improvement, it's a continuous investment, and again, I think the future is very bright for the Springfield facility.
Coming up after the break, the work continues here at the plant in Missouri. My job's done. Over the years, this place has produced over 1 billion belts of all kinds. So they know how to get the job done. But when it comes to snowmobile belts, these things present some unique challenges, but thankfully Ultimax has got a secret weapon, and his name is Eric Murray, who knows more about building belts than anybody else on the planet.
Snow is the high-tech world when it comes to belts. Any other type of belt is relatively simple. Snowmobile is pushing the technology envelope in speed, in tension, in temperature, all of those things. Your sled, you can be turning 11,000 RPM at the driven clutch while transmitting 200 horsepower at 200 degrees. And so it's a challenge in all of those areas, and CVTs have inherent misalignment and all these kinds of things that belts really don't like just by nature. When it comes to CVT type belts, every drive is kind of unique and different, and so it's really difficult to design for every drive. So where we start is trying to kill a belt in every way you can kill a belt. It's almost kind of sadistic. You decide, how can I hurt this belt? And then you create tests to create those types of failures. So there's inner cog cracking is a bad thing. Edge cord breakage is another way that they'll fail. Top cog coming off. High speed is its own type of failure. And so we design tests to cause all those types of failures, and then we create metrics and we say, here's where we're at. Next generation needs to be here in these metrics.
My baby doesn't lie to me, oh no. My baby wouldn't try to let me go.
When it comes to the question of aftermarket versus OE, that is the question that everybody wants to ask is, what am I really getting? And with us, we've been out here, we've been making belts in this facility since 1959. We've put out more belts than anybody. We have relationships with all 4 major sled manufacturers. And so our belts, because of the history and because of the expertise that we have and the R&D that we do in the back end, our belts work really well. What you get out of ours that you won't, or out of an aftermarket belt, a quality aftermarket belt that you won't get out of the OE, is things like a warranty. Most of the time the OE will not warrant your belt.
Ultimax also stands behind their belts with a 1-year replacement warranty that covers normal use. There's an online form to fill out, and if your claim is accepted, all you have to do is pay for shipping and handling, and Ultimax will ship you a replacement. If you do have a failure, you have nothing to lose by applying for a replacement, which helps us all. Ultimax works hard to test their belts as best they can, but sometimes us riders can make them fail in ways they never thought of, and by learning from our failures, they can make us a better belt.
Every day the voice in my head, my head, my head, my head say no. Going insane, what's it all about, bruv? You've been saying this for days, come and make your mind up.
We do all kinds of belts, right? I mean, we do belts for outdoor power equipment and for industrial stuff and all that, and your big ag belts. None of it is fun. Snowmobiling is fun. Who wouldn't like having to put more power to the ground? You know, every advance we make makes you go faster. When it comes to efficiency, you know, you throw away power in the belt drive. If we can gain efficiency, guess what? More power to the track means you go faster. Who wouldn't like that?
Coming up after the break, the new Polaris Indy 850 XC is up for a first burn. Perhaps the biggest news in the snowmobile world in 2019 across all brands in the performance category is the introduction of Polaris's new 850 Patriot engine, the most powerful 2-stroke motor ever built by Polaris. And our 850 for this year finds its home inside the new Indy XC 129. In addition to the engine, for this season, the top-of-the-line Indy also transitions into the Axis chassis with Pro CC rear suspension. And honestly, I'm not sure which is bigger news, the new engine or the new chassis. What I do know is that by combining these 2 new features into one, the Indy XC sled has become bigger than the sum of its parts. To say this is the best Indy ever is a huge statement. One you might be thinking is taking the hype of the new Indy just a little bit too far. That is, until you ride this thing and you realize it is the best Indy ever. I've been an Indy fan ever since the days of the old 650s, which I thought was king of all Indies. That is, until now. Jumping on the new 850, this sled just feels right, despite the corniness of a comment like that. Maybe it's because we're already used to the Axis chassis with the Rush and its ergonomics and handling. Now, the Rush has been a sled our entire crew has been having an affair with over the past couple of seasons. But one aspect of the Rush I never liked was the rear suspension. Sure, it worked well enough on trail, but it never performed the way I wanted it to off trail, and I always felt cramped on the running boards. Plus, I just didn't like the look of the back end of the sled. I always thought the arse end of the Rush looked like something produced out of the Russian People's Factory No. 3. But now, with the Pro CC rear skid frame and traditional tunnel, we've finally got a sled that looks as good as it performs. The Pro CC also seems to work better than its outside the track Pro XC cousin. The CC is lighter and gives the rear of the sled a more versatile and nimble feel. It will also soak up big bumps better than the Pro XC, making this skid equal to or better than Polaris's other top trail rear suspension. Time will tell if this rear skid signals the beginning of the end for the Rush experiment. The new 850 Patriot mill is the other piece of the puzzle that makes the Indy XC. This engine is bacon good, and it's all new.
It's also built with durability and power in mind, eclipsing the old 800 HO Cleanfire. It revs quick and settles into a flat torque curve that pulls for days. There's a ton of tech that went into this power plant, from a redeveloped low inertia crankshaft to extra large PTO bearings. Even the mounting system into the Axis chassis is new to cut down on vibration, but also stabilize center to center distances on the clutches, keeping them from deflecting when you grab a mitt full of throttle. It's clear that Polaris had a goal in mind as it put together the new Indy 850 XC. And that goal probably looked a lot like this: the other 850cc sled with mobile crushing abilities, the Skidoo XRS 850. Which raises the question, did they succeed? Well, let's talk about that. By the numbers, each sled is on a level playing field. Horsepower, weight, and track length are all pretty much equal, and each sled can handle the toughest, roughest, most whooped out trail with ease and ask for more. Now each sled will spin the clock to speeds well over 100 miles an hour in a big hurry, plus each is packed with the latest snowmobile engine and chassis tech. By the numbers, I think it would be hard to choose which one of these two sleds is the better one. I think it really does come down to individual rider preferences. The Skidoo, for instance, has a bit more adjustability in the front suspension, and the R-Motion rear has definitely been the benchmark rear skid to which all others are judged. The Do also has a much more aggressive riding position that seems to put the rider down in the sled rather than the Polaris' feel of riding on top. Now the Skidoo's adjustable handlebars that rotate the bars fore and aft is also a slick and functional piece of kit, while the Polaris has a rock system that works well but only allows up and down adjustment without tools. Riding these sleds, you'll also appreciate wearing knee and shin protection, because to get the most out of either one, you'll have your legs wrapped around the cowl. This will beat the inside of your knees black and blue. Now I must say the Skidoo does a better job of bruising you up with its step design. It works great, but wow does it hurt after a while without shin pads. From the factory, wind protection on either one of these sleds is pretty limited. Actually, there's basically none. So if you do plan on riding in the deep chill of wintertime, you might want to think about accessorizing your sled with a windshield like we've done with the Skidoo here. Our Polaris windshield, it's on the way. Both of these sleds are great machines, awesome at what they do, and picking a winner between the two would be really tough. But polling the troops around here, we've all come to the agreement that the Polaris with the new 850 Patriot engine is going to be just a little bit faster than the Do, plus the Axis chassis we feel is going to be a little bit better to live with on the trails. Time will tell, but one thing is for sure, both these sleds are a lot of fun to ride.
Coming up later on in the show, we've got more from the Ultimax plant here in Springfield, Missouri. There's a ton of myths out there about belts, so to debunk some of those myths, we've got an Eric, the belt guru.
No, modern snowmobile belts do not stretch. The cords that we use in these are very high modulus. What that means, practically speaking, is they don't stretch, period. They wear in width. So if it seems like it's getting loose, it's not because it got longer. There's no point in wrapping a tape around it to see if it's stretched. It's worn in width. Adjust your secondary if you can. Go ride. Incorrect. Some belts have an arrow on them. It says, run it this way. That's led to an erroneous assumption of people that belts are directional. I can put this belt on this way, I can put it on this way. Doesn't matter. The reason they do that is it's a good idea if you pull the belt off to put it back on running the same direction. What we recommend is you always get in the habit of putting it so you can read the Ultimax brand. If you get in the habit of doing that, you'll always be running the same direction. Not necessarily.
What happens is a lot of people think, I want the belt that grips the best because that's going to put the most power down. And that's not always the case, because your clutches expect a certain frictional characteristic of the belt. So if your clutches are set up for a belt that doesn't have a lot of friction, and you throw a real grippy belt on there, what happens a lot of times is you can pull the engine RPM down, takes you out of the power band, you end up going slower. Incorrect. A lot of people look at the cogs, they say, why does that belt have all those little bumps on it? The reason is not for cooling. They look like cooling fins, but they're not. Here's what they're supposed to do. You have all these cords. This is the tensile part of your belt. This does the work. The job of the rubber is to keep those things flat so they all pull the load together. Cogs allow it to be stiff across the belt, kind of like a buttress, while keeping flexibility along the belt. No. Back in the Stone Age of belt manufacturing, we used to use some mold release and things like that in manufacturing that meant belts were kind of sticky. And so belt manufacturers used to recommend that you wash your belt. Hot water, soap, that kind of thing. Anymore, any modern belt manufacturer doesn't use that. The belt's not sticky. There's no reason to take it in the shower with you. Wrong. There's all kinds of incorrect ways to store a belt. I know that storage space is tight on a sled, but one thing you never want to do is try to wad your belt up so tight in order to keep space for your sandwich. One thing that will happen is if you end up back bending it, you can snap it. The rubber is designed to stay in compression. If you flip that thing inside out or kink it backwards, it will break. Wrong. Belts are made of rubber, which has a glass transition temperature. Below that temperature, they act like glass. They will snap. If you're riding in extreme temperatures, if you're at -40, take that belt off, take it inside with you. If you forget and leave it on the sled, let the sled warm up a little bit before you engage the belt.
Hey, thanks for joining us this week on Snowmobiler Television, where we learned how to go from this to this. Until next week, keep the skis between the trees.
STV has been brought to you by CKX. Wear your passion. On Snow Magazine, for snowmobilers from snowmobilers.